So if the rollout of a 5G or super fast network were a map, the Huawei controversy would be the Great Wall dividing the U.S. and its closest allies. The U.S., Japan, New Zealand and Australia have restricted or outright banned Huawei, the Chinese telecom giant, from their 5G networks. But France, Canada, Germany and the U.K. are still willing to consider Huawei as part of their rollout. Keep in mind, the U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia and New Zealand are all in the so-called Five Eyes intelligence alliance. With that alliance in mind, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo warned the U.S. will no longer partner with any country that uses Huawei equipment or systems.
Been out around the world, just making sure everybody had the same information, that countries understand the risk of putting this Huawei technology into their IT systems. We're not going to put American information at risk.
This powder keg heating up as high-level China-U.S. trade talks continue right now behind closed doors in Washington, D.C. We bring in a Fox Business exclusive from the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University, Professor Joel Trachtman, the world's foremost expert on international law. Let's get right to it. What does Huawei do? What kind of barrier or so-called wall does it present between us and our own allies now?
Well, as Secretary Pompeo suggested, there's a real cybersecurity risk of either sabotage of our network or espionage by having a backdoor in some of Huawei's equipment. Now, Huawei is a private company, but it is highly influenced, many people believe, by the Chinese government and has its origins in the Chinese People's Liberation Army. And so the question is, can we trust this network equipment? And this is a big issue that is going to arise in all sorts of areas, not just in network equipment, but in all Internet of Things kinds of products. Will your Alexa app be listening, and who will be listening to it, and where is it manufactured, and what kinds of back doors are there? So we need to check. And as you suggested, Liz, the British have taken the view that they can manage this risk, that they can watch how the software is compiled, how these machines are made in a way that is effective to avoid backdoors and sabotage and espionage. The United States seems to think that it can't, and also there may be a competitive aspect here where Qualcomm and other companies want their standards to be the winning standards.
Well, I get that whole, it's just trying to promote the U.S. companies, but I don't really buy that, Joel. I truly believe that and I've talked to experts at some of the biggest companies, including Cisco and some of the others, who say that the Chinese can absolutely infiltrate, do espionage through these pieces of equipment that Huawei can install. So I don't know, though, if it's fair to require that the UK and France and these other countries can put the genie back into the bottle. How do you extricate all of the Huawei telephone users? You know, they're the #2 smartphone maker in the world. How do you say, well, you can't use those anymore? You're going to pay for them to replace them with something else?
It's an enormous problem, and these network equipment items will be very difficult. Phones are difficult too. I think the question is, how can you watch and be certain that these things are safe, even on updates, as these things are updated over time? It's going to take a lot of cooperation, and the world has to solve this problem. Otherwise, we won't be able to trade in anything, because everything is going to be part of this Internet of Things. So it's a real danger. And then Secretary Pompeo says, well, look, if the UK doesn't block Huawei, then we won't be able to share information because they won't have secure networks. Now, I'm not sure that applies to military or espionage kinds of officials, because they'll probably avoid having the Huawei equipment. But there may be some issues here.
Can this thirst for 5G, this super fast, high-speed network and downloading of movies, can that really impede the trade talks, do you think?
Well, there is more discussion in trade about e-commerce, and cybersecurity is coming right up there to challenge trade. But you know, we've got more old economy issues in trade with agriculture and autos and steel and aluminum. So we've got to solve those issues first, but then we will have to solve these cybersecurity types of issues as well.
Professor Joel Trachtman of the Fletcher School at University of Tufts. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you, Liz.
Anytime.